A warm welcome to all the members, but first of all, I need to ask for the webcast to be started and await your confirmation. Okay, thank you. A warm welcome to all members today and members of the public and deputations. Thank you for attending this meeting of the Adult and Social Care Select Committee. This meeting is being recorded and webcast live on YouTube via the County Council website. Filming is also permitted by the press and public, and so by remaining at the meeting, you are consenting to potentially being recorded. Please be aware that filming is only permitted in the room whilst the meeting is taking place. Filming during any breaks or elsewhere in the building is not permitted. We are not expecting, we are expecting a fire drill, which has just been, but in event that there is a real fire alarm, please exit via the reception and follow everyone across to the Great Hall. Toilets to my left out to the corridor, turn right along the corridor, turn left, and ladies and gents are down there. Hearing loop. The room is fitted with an infrared hearing loop, which is permanently switched on. You will need either a neck loop, or if you use hearing aids, or headphones for amplified sound. Both are available on request from reception. I'd like to welcome all members to this meeting, as well as executive and cabinet members, and also those who are here to observe and speak. Members, we have a busy agenda, and it is therefore important that we make the most efficient and effective use of the time available. Please, can I therefore ask members to be succinct in both your questions and contributions to the debate, so that all members have an opportunity to contribute to the scrutiny of the items in the time available. If members want to propose amendments to the recommendations, I would appreciate it if you could make your proposed amendments known at the start of the debate of the items. However, if an amendment arises out of the debate, it can still be introduced at a later stage. I just want to remind all members that any amendments should be in writing and must be proposed and seconded. When it comes to voting, we will take any proposed amendments in reverse order and then vote on the substantive recommendations, as per the procedure used at full council meetings. Item 1, apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Councillor Alan Dowden, and Councillor Hiscott is attending as his deputy. Councillor Lance Codrell, as a deputy member, sent his apologies, and executive members, Councillor Fairhurst and Councillor Warwick, and also Councillor Garden and Councillor Adam Jackman. Item 2, declarations of interests. Members are welcome to disclose any declarations of interest when we get to the main item. Item 3, deputations. At the item. Okay. Item 3, deputations. We have one deputation and no local county councillors have approached us for speaking this morning. The deputation is the Chief Executive, Richard Gamage, on behalf of Two Saints, regarding funding cuts to social inclusion services. Richard, you have 10 minutes from the start.
Well, many thanks for that, and I'm delighted I didn't have to rush over the room and eat into my 10 minutes. Absolutely, at Two Saints, we're a housing and helping organisation, supported housing in the technical terms, but effectively we're there to house and help people across Hampshire, West Berkshire, the Isle of Wight and down into Dorset. We help on any given night about 850 individuals across Hampshire, about 85 properties and about 300 staff in delivering that. So that's the scale of the organisation. We're clearly very interested in the recommendations in the whole issue of removing potentially all funding for homelessness support provided by Hampshire County Council, because that's what it equates to. And just to give you a feel for how that might impact upon the clients who we serve, I thought I would just say a few words about them and about the direct impact. Could I first of all, though, start by saying that we absolutely respect the fact that the County Council has to balance the books. I know that's not a technical term, but we recognise that absolutely and the legal requirement to do that. Equally, we recognise that funding for homelessness support services comes from a variety of sources, including from districts and elsewhere. So we're not looking solely at one entity and saying, right, it's all you. That would be completely unfair and unrealistic. So that's my starter. So just a little bit about what we do and how we do it. The funding that we're talking about, largely about 98% of the funding that the county currently provides goes to 2 Saints to provide those services. So there are 1 or 2 other organisations, but the bulk of it is 2 Saints. On any given day, there are 172 bed spaces for people experiencing homelessness across Hampshire, and those 172 bed spaces will go, and they'll go very quickly. We are already in a position where we're having to stop lease extensions and start to shut up buildings in anticipation of a proposal, and we will move very swiftly once a proposal comes forward to try to do something else with our buildings, and it almost certainly won't be homelessness support services because we'll need to make better use of them. And the risk is that they never come back to provide those services in the future. So the annual rough sleeper count in Hampshire shows an increase. Could I commend the working group's work on this? It was very thorough, and certainly we're seeing homelessness increase to record levels nationally, depending on which statistic you pick up in which journal, up by 22%, 27%, 26%, 25%, you take your pick, but certainly it's forecast to continue to increase nationally, and we're seeing that increase reflected across Hampshire equally as well. The Conservative government previously had an aspiration to end all homelessness by the end of the last Parliament. It made some good strides early on, and it tailed off towards the end, and we saw that increase. COVID, cost of living, and all the rest of it. The proposal to end all funding in April 25 would be really difficult for us to deliver. Even an extension to 26 would make a difference to our ability to be able to manage the buildings, manage our staff, because there could be up to 100 posts also at risk. So that's employment in the county too. When I talk about 172 bed spaces directly affected, actually in any given year there's about 1,000 individuals who, were it not for the delivery of those bed spaces, would find themselves rough sleeping in Hampshire. And who are these individuals? These are people who suffered quite often multiple traumas. 2/3 will have a diagnosed mental health issue, 1/3 will have a physical health issue, and probably something in the order of 75% have got an addiction. 10% will be coming out of the criminal justice system directly into our services. So if our services aren't there, they'll be going directly to rough sleeping. In any given year, we will lose about 5 individuals who will die in our services. We will also save a number of lives in our services that wouldn't otherwise be saved if they're rough sleeping. And of course, those people who do die in our services currently die in a loving, supportive environment. If they're rough sleeping, it's not the same. And so we anticipate more deaths, and we anticipate more deaths in public places as a result of any ending of such funding. We're not able to make up the funding in any other way. Housing benefit rules would preclude us doing that, and we don't have access to enormous amounts of fundraising. So we're really reliant upon the delivery of the public funding that we get from the county. The dual whammy for us is that at the same time as we're looking at potentially Hampshire County Council cutting all funding for homelessness support across the county, we're also looking at potentially some of the central government cuts impacting local authorities, the districts, and that will have a wider impact. Some of that could kick in as early as next April, where funding wouldn't be extended. And so there's a double whammy for those who live in Hampshire. And we're talking about, an example would be 45 units lost in the Test Valley, in Andover, in a flash, 20 in Aldershot, 20 in Basingstoke, and the list goes on. So let me tell you a story about one or two individuals. John's story. John's a 35-year-old male. He was referred to our hostel in Andover following being released from prison. At the time, he was struggling to manage his mental well-being and substance misuse. We worked with him with a personal support plan. He's now substance-free, set up a repayment plan for his previous debts, and he's moved on accommodation beyond our services. It's a success story for John, it's a success story for our organisation, and it's a success story, frankly, for Hampshire. And our fear is that with the loss of this funding, not only won't we have those success stories, we'll have more people rough sleeping in Hampshire, and this at the end of the day is the most disadvantaged people in society. So we would clearly urge you to consider this very carefully. I know that you will. I commend you on the thoroughness of your work to date on this, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank your colleagues from Two Saints. Item 4, members, is Chairman's announcements. To highlight to the members that you will have received an email from the CEO of the Citizens Advice Hampshire providing comments in relation to the savings proposal regarding grants at 6C on our agenda. This was circulated to you in time for this meeting. I now request that the Vice Chairman to chair item 5 as I chaired the working group.
Chairman, I declare my interest.
Thank you, Councillor North.
Thank you very much. Just as leader of one of the district councils in Hampshire, obviously that has a responsibility for housing and homelessness. I just wanted to put that on record again. I put that on record at the main HAS committee when we set up the working groups, and I was permitted to serve on the working group, but I just wanted to flag that interest again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Withers. Item 5, SP25 Task and Finish Group report. May I invite the Task and Finish Group Chairman, Councillor Withers, to give an introduction and a summary of the Task and Finish Group work undertaken.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. The report describes the work of the HAS cross-party working group formed to scrutinise the Stage 2 consultation in relation to Savings Programme 2025 proposals within the remit of the Health and Adult Social Care Select Committee. The group was appointed at the HAS meeting on the 21st of November 2023 to scrutinise the approach and outcomes of the Stage 2 consultation in relation to the Adults Health and Care proposals under the 2025 Savings Programme. The proposals were: 1. Changes to the way in which contributions towards non-residential social care costs are calculated. 2. Adult social care grants programme for voluntary, community and social enterprise organisations. 3. Withdrawal of all funding for non-statutory homelessness support services. The working group held its first meeting in December, at which members were briefed on the proposals prior to the public consultation starting in January 2024. 2 meetings were held during the public consultation in February and March, with a further 4 meetings held in April, May and June, post the closure of the public consultation. The purpose was, as per the terms of reference, to oversee and scrutinise the approach and outcomes of the future services consultation in relation to the 3 proposals. Members on the working group had the opportunity to ask questions and discuss the proposals and findings from the consultation. The findings from this scrutiny are included in the report. There was ample opportunity and significant work put into the debate and answering of specific questions around each of the consultation areas. Further description of this will be put forward when we move on to the discussion of the officer's report under the next item at this meeting. This detailed work resulted in the following recommendations by the working group, which you can see on page 5 and page 6 of the agenda pack. That the Health and Adult Social Care Select Committee note that the cross-party working group held 8 meetings between December 2023 and June 2024 and had the opportunity to discuss the consultation process and the consultation feedback. That following this scrutiny, the working group agreed that the consultation had been a comprehensive process which had given residents the information and opportunity to make reasoned responses, and that it provided the County Council with the necessary information to consider the impacts of adult health and care proposals on the residents of Hampshire. As Chairman, I would also like to add that organisations affected by the proposals were consulted as well as the residents, and the working group were mindful of the potential impact on those organisations based on their feedback. With regard to the adults' health and care saving proposals, the working group recommends, in respect of the non-residential social care charging calculation proposal, the working group supports the move to take 100% of assessable income into account as part of the financial assessment calculation and further recommends that the County Council undertakes a review 6 months after implementation of the impact of the new charging processes on individuals. In relation to the Adult Social Care Grants Programme for voluntary, community and social enterprise organisations proposal, the working group supports and recommends ceasing the grants as outlined in the consultation. We acknowledge that this may add pressure to the third sector at a time when councils and other organisations seek to rely on it more. The proposal for the early withdrawal of homelessness support funding in 2025 was not supported by the working group. Should a decision be made fully to withdraw funding, the working group recommends that funding continues until the initial term of the current contracts and grant agreements expires on the 31st of March 2026. With regard to the proposal for the permanent withdrawal of all funding for non-statutory homelessness support services, this was not supported by all of the working group. The working group also recommends that the adult health and care ensures that anyone using County Council funded homelessness support services who would be impacted now and in the future years by this proposal has access to a Care Act assessment. That the working group recommends that the County Council monitors the service impact of changes to services, specifically the number of Care Act assessments and the cost of any alternative services put in place by the County Council to meet the eligible care needs of people currently using services, and to report back to the Health and Adult Social Care Select Committee after an agreed time period. In addition, through the course of our deliberations, the working group also had concerns about the potential impact of proposed reductions in passenger transport on social care service users. Whilst this proposal is not subject to scrutiny by this committee, the working group made the following recommendations. That the Chairman of Health and Adult Social Care Select Committee asks the Chairman of the Universal Services Select Committee to highlight the concerns identified by this working group that any proposed reductions in passenger transport should not adversely impact social care service users. Should the decision be taken to reduce passenger transport, The working group also recommends that the Health and Adult Social Care Select Committee reviews the impact on social care service users 6 months after any decision made. To conclude, I'd like to thank all the members who took part in the working group for their time and dedication to the task. The working group considered the issues at length, and I commend our findings to the full committee.
Thank you, Councillor Withers, for that summary. Members, this agenda item is noting the process and views of the working group and not for debating the proposals. Where the working group have made recommendations relating to the 3 adults' health and care saving streams, these will need to be brought forward as amendments or additional recommendations under the next agenda item. However, as mentioned by Councillor Withers, the working group also expressed a view regarding the impact of passenger transport proposals on social care service users. It is for the Universal Services Select Committee to scrutinise the passenger transport proposals at their meeting on the 19th of September. If Councillor Withers, as chairman of the working group, wishes to propose those recommendations to the committee now, do we have someone to second? Councillor Taylor, thank you. Do we have any members who have any questions relating to these recommendations or the process of the working group? Do any members wish to debate the passenger transport recommendations? Can we put the recommendations up on the board, on the screen? Just verbally. Yep. Okay, so the recommendations are: recommendation number 1, that the Health and Adult Social Care Select Committee ask the chairman to write to the chairman of Universal Services Select Committee to highlight the concerns identified by the HAS working group, that any proposed reductions in passenger transport should not adversely impact social care service users. Those in favour? Thank you. Item number 2. Should the decision be taken to reduce passenger transport, that the Health and Social Care Select Committee reviews the impact on social care users 6 months after the decision is made. Those in agreement? Thank you. I now hand back to the chairman to chair the next item.
I confirm that both those recommendations were carried by members. Item 6, members, pre-scrutiny of the SP25 savings proposals. In the pack is a cover report highlighting that the HASC is pre-scrutinising 3 savings streams at this meeting. Following the cover report is a draft report for Cabinet, which provides the context for all 13 savings proposals. The Cabinet will be taking a decision on all the proposals at their meeting on the 14th of October 2024. The 3 streams being considered at this meeting are to be scrutinised separately as items 6A, 6B and 6C on our agenda. As noted in the cover report, the role of this committee is to make recommendations to the Cabinet. This may be to support the recommendations put forward by the officers, or to make amended or alternative recommendations. The first proposal we will consider is the Homelessness Support Services, see agenda item 6A, headed Appendix 10 to the draft Cabinet report, starting at page 55 in the pack. I'd like to introduce the Director, Jess Hutchinson, for your comments, please.
Thank you, Councillor Withers. Before I start, I just wanted to explain that many of you will have known Graham Allen. He retired on the 2nd of September and I'm now Director of Adults Health and Care as opposed to Assistant Director. I also wanted to introduce the other officers with me today. Pete Stokes, who is the Strategic Manager for Demand Management and Prevention, who is leading on grant proposals. Jackie Evans, Strategic Commissioning Lead, leading on homelessness services proposals, and Karen Andrews, Head of Service for Headquarters, leading on charging proposals. I will be presenting today, but they will be assisting with questions. So, Appendix 10 considers the proposal to stop funding the services that Hampshire County Council does not have a legal requirement to provide that support people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. This is in the context put forward for Cabinet around an overall shortfall predicted for 25 to 26, which is now expected to be £175 million across the council, rather than the £132 million first described in the original reports. This report is rightly very comprehensive, over 50 pages long, and so in the interests of time, I will provide an overview and draw your attention to the main points to leave time for debate and questions. This appendix sets out the context to the proposal to end County Council funding for homelessness support services, providing information about the services affected and the alternative support available, as well as the legal duties in relation to this service area. It outlines the consultation process, summarises the feedback received, responds to the key issues, and considers the mitigations available. The County Council currently spends just over £2 million per year on homelessness support services for people over the age of 18 who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. Homelessness support services funded by the County Council are through both directly commissioned services with service providers and grant agreements with district and borough councils. The initial term of the contracts and grant agreements ends on the 31st of March 2026. The homelessness support services funded by the County Council provide short-term support to people in multi-occupancy hostel settings, supported accommodation and in the community to help them to address the issues that they may have contributed to their current homelessness or may be putting them at risk of homelessness. This may include support to manage physical health, mental health and substance misuse, alongside support to maximise welfare benefits, budget effectively and to manage the responsibilities of a tenancy agreement. These County Council funded services form part of a wider local network of services available to people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness in each district or borough council area. Some other services are funded by district and borough councils, who in turn receive funding from central government for this purpose. The County Council does not receive any funding from the government for homelessness services. The County Council does not have a statutory responsibility to provide homelessness support services, however has continued to provide funding since the ring fence was removed from the previous regime of supported people funding in 2009. As new legal duties and new funding was made available to housing authorities, the Council has reduced its financial support for these services through previous savings programmes. The district and borough councils, as housing authorities, have statutory responsibilities for preventing and relieving homelessness and receive homelessness prevention grant and other grant funding from central government for this purpose. The HPG allocation for 24 to 25 for Hampshire districts is set out in Sub-Appendix A. A number of other two-tier councils have either removed this funding support or are considering doing so. So Leicestershire and Kent have decommissioned services such as these already. The report makes two recommendations: that the County Council ends funding for homelessness support services, also known as social inclusion services, on the 30th of April 2025, and that the County Council gives 6 months' notice to terminate the 6 contracts and 3 grant agreements in place for these services to bring these contracts and grant agreements to an end on the 30th of April 2025. In making these recommendations, officers have taken into account the District and Borough Council's statutory responsibilities for homelessness and the statutory duties of the Council under the Care Act, alongside the significant financial challenges facing the County Council, as outlined in the main Cabinet report. The District and Borough Councils have statutory duties for housing and homelessness. The County Council has a responsibility under the Care Act to meet eligible needs. And in addition, the NHS has a responsibility to ensure that health services are accessible to everyone who needs them. The legal context and further detail on statutory responsibilities in this area can be found from paragraph 50 of the report. The County Council recognises that some people using homelessness support services may have eligible needs. The County Council will meet its legal responsibilities under the Care Act through the provision of alternative services as required by the individual. The proposal to end funding for homelessness support services was included within the Future Services consultation. The appendix provides detail regarding the robust and bespoke approach taken to promoting the consultation and the work undertaken to support people using services to give their views. 4,300 responses were received to the proposal on homelessness support services, including 4,239 from individuals, 63 from organisations, and a further 32 from elected representatives. I'm pleased to say that 105 current and 101 past service users responded, with 885 people choosing not to specify if they were or had been service users. It is noted that the majority of the responses to the Future Services consultation were in disagreement with the proposal, and that sat at 74%. And strength of feeling was high regarding the impact on both individuals and other organisations. A summary of the impacts shared and the Council's view on mitigation is included in the report, with the fuller analysis of responses that was published earlier this year. That could be found on paragraph 64. Whilst it is recognised that the proposal may result in a reduction in support services and possibly accommodation options for homeless people, the County Council is not currently in the financial position to continue to fund services that it is not legally required to provide. The Council completed an exercise to estimate the potential cost of providing alternative services to meet the Care Act eligible needs of people using homelessness services, and it is estimated that this would be significantly less than current spend. I think it's also important to say that if a decision is made to withdraw the funding, the County Council would work closely with service providers, district and borough councils and other organisations to develop and support transitional plans to meet the needs of individuals who are currently using services. This would include offering bespoke Care Act assessments where required and ensuring that any identified eligible care and support needs are met. It would be my priority, should recommendations be taken forward, that the Council work in partnership to ensure that people using services get transition plans in place and receive services when they need them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director. I'd just like to remind members the views of the working group on this proposal are: the proposal for the early withdrawal of homelessness support funding in 2025 was not supported by the working group. Should a decision be made to fully withdraw funding, the working group recommends that the funding continues until the initial term of the current contracts and grant agreements expires on the 31st of March 2026. With regard to the proposal for permanent withdrawal of all funding for non-statutory homelessness support services, this was not supported by all of the working group. The working group also recommends that Adults Health and Care ensures that anyone using County Council funded homelessness support services who would be impacted now and in the future years by this proposal has access to a Care Act assessment. The working group also recommends that the County Council monitors the service impact of changes to services, specifically the number of Care Act assessments and the cost of any alternative services put in place by the County Council to meet the eligible needs of the people currently using services, and to report back to the Health and Adult Social Care Select Committee after an agreed time period. Can I now invite members of the working group for any comments? Councillor North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would, and as you invited us to do earlier, say at the very beginning of this that I would like to propose an amendment, and the amendment basically just reflects the words that you've just read out there, and actually then ensures that the pre-scrutiny report better reflects the views of the working group. Now, I have the amendment here in writing. I know you've just read it out, but if I pass it around, is that okay?
Certainly.
And essentially, Chairman, as you just said, it was the working group's view that a better transitional arrangement is made, and that the funding shouldn't be withdrawn until at least the 31st of March 2026. And I completely understand what the Director of Adult Social Care just said in terms of there would be, if it was withdrawn, conversations with districts and boroughs and other organisations like to make sure transitional plans are in place. But I just don't think there's enough time between now and the end of April to do that, especially considering the very powerful intervention that the Director of Two Saints made earlier. So the first part of the amendment would essentially be, as you said, Mr. Chairman, to ensure that funding is extended to at least the 31st of March 2026. That secondly, that anyone impacted now in future years by the proposal has access to a Care Act assessment, and part 3 of that amendment, that the impact of the changes to services is reported back to this committee. So I've put those recommendations to the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor North, that will be taken at the stage where we do actually get to amendments. But thank you for bringing that up as a member of the working group.
Apologies, I was just following your instructions to say it at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
that
fine.
was the wrong place. Then
No, that's fine. That's fine, because you were a member of the working group. Councillor Taylor, also a member of the working group.
Thank you, Chair. And I've already lodged with you a proposed amendment as well, which relates specifically to the recommendations being that we're being asked to deal with in paragraph 4, and that is to delete the wording in the first bullet point recommendation, and also to amend the wording in the second bullet point to be that the County Council gives notice to terminate the contracts and 3 grant arrangements in place for the services to bring the contracts and agreements to an end on the 31st of March 2026. So slightly different, and the reason for that is that I don't think that some of these things are a matter for us to put on our working plan, I think, our work plan rather than amendments.
Thank you. Fully understand the point you've made there. Any other members of the working group for comments? Then I open it to the floor. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I wonder if I could ask a question of the Director, if I may. You said earlier on that the cost of meeting our Care Act eligible needs would be less than the £2 million that we're spending at the moment. Do you know exactly how much that would be? How confident are you of that figure? And have you taken into account the impact of the withdrawal of funding to the district and borough councils?
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. This was an area that the working group and officers were in discussion on for a large proportion of the working group sessions. We carried out, so one of the issues is the fact that the people using homelessness support services do so for a temporary period of time. So they're a changing cohort of individuals. In order to provide an accurate perspective on this, we looked at a desktop review with experienced social workers for 60 people, and then identified that out of those 60 people, 11 individuals would be required to have alternative funded services, and that they would meet Care Act eligible need. So what we then did is extrapolate that up, given the number of people who came through services in 2022 to 23, which were 220 people, and that resulted in us a very risk-averse sum of around £600,000 as our costs. So, and as I say, that was a risk-averse calculation. Members were part of that and scrutinised that calculation. And as I say, it was a very intense discussion that we had around this particular area. So I'm confident that there will be a significant saving made, despite the fact that there will be some people with Care Act eligible need in the cohort going forward. Thank you.
But if I may, Chairman, you haven't answered the bit about the withdrawal of funding from the district and boroughs and whether that was taken into account in the calculation.
Apologies, Councillor Harrison. Yes, it was taken into account in that calculation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hiscock.
Thank you, Chairman. In my division, I have most of the stage 1 accommodation in Winchester, so I'm well familiar with the problems that we're having. Can I just start by thanking the director from Two Saints for the work that he's done in my community over the years, and I hope it would be possible for it to carry on, but if not, it doesn't. But thank you for what you've done so far. That brings me to the question really of what happens to those people who have been supported in Two Saints, and particularly those with substance abuse problems and in need of support for those medical issues. And these are medical issues, they're not necessarily housing issues, so they can't be put back to the other local authority. And my concern particularly with them is that generally the nature of their substance dependencies is that they live pretty chaotic lives. And my concern is that the support that's offered to them isn't as local in future as it is now. And I'm wondering what support that we will be able to give them in terms of either transport arrangements and actually more encouragement to actually make the effort to go and accept the support that they're being offered. Because it worries me that once it's out of sight, that they won't go. So what can be done for that side of it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The first thing that I would say is that anybody in Part 2 accommodation, so people with more significant need, will receive a Care Act assessment as part of their transition plan. And what that will include is signposting and fulfilling responsibilities around thinking about preventing, reducing and delaying need. Other organisations also retain their responsibilities with regard to individuals. So, for example, Public Health have 9 hubs that support people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness with substance misuse issues. Equally, NHS services need to continue to be accessible to this cohort of individuals. I think it is very important that Adults Health and Care work in partnership with districts, and should this be taken forward, that would absolutely be the approach taken, with a ring-fenced team to support. But having said that, there are other organisations that retain those responsibilities. There are also voluntary sector arrangements across the county, different in different areas, that would support individuals, particularly people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness as well. So it's a complex picture, but there are networks with significant amount of organisational activity around this. So it isn't a zero-sum situation by any means, and we would be working to make sure that anyone with care and support needs received the support that they needed.
Right, thank you for that. I do understand, but my concern is as much about maintaining the contact, people staying in touch with these people once they aren't in the hostels anymore. The likelihood is that they'll be dispersed within the community, and it's going to make it more difficult to be aware of where they are, what their situation is, and how urgent any particular crisis they may be having is. And that's really my main concern on this, is that how will somebody who will be actually keeping an eye on that person, who will be available for emergency care or help or advice or whatever else they're going to need, because there is a real risk that we're just going to cut these guys adrift.
Thank you. So our teams are, we have circa 400 FTE social workers across the county, depending on the age of the individual concerned, who support people with care and support needs. They are used to working with people who self-neglect or find it difficult to engage with services. And I would very much hope that in working in partnership with the districts and boroughs over the coming months, that we would be able to establish even better communication to make sure that any issue with an individual that perhaps living in a different tenancy supported by the districts and boroughs would be able to make contact with us should they have any concerns around their care and support needs. So I think that those are things that we would absolutely be committed to do as part, should these recommendations be taken forward. But I don't know, Jackie, if you have anything to add with regard to that.
Thank you. Just only to add that I believe that some of our social workers are working with people who are already rough sleeping, for example, so they will go to where those individuals are as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. Just an administrative thing. The amendment that's been put forward, we should understand, is our recommendation from this committee to the Cabinet, and therefore we should really replace all the mentions of the working group with HASC and put a preamble in front. I think that HASC advises the Cabinet as follows. That said, I support what Councillor North has put forward, because I think it is a sensible and pragmatic way forward. I know that the start of this budget consideration was to go down to the statutory minimum, where we have a legal obligation. I do take it that we have a legal or a moral obligation that if we entered into a current contract and agreement that expires on the 31st of March 2026, we shouldn't end it early. We said that we would give this money, and I think it's absolutely right that we give the money up to the point where we said we would, because otherwise we could be accused as a council of acting in bad faith. Recommendation one, it is a particularly good one that we extend it, and we also then give our partners in the districts and the boroughs the opportunity to prepare for something that they're not going to like, but it gives them an extra year to prepare for it. I know from work that my wife did when she was on Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council, she isn't anymore, that she set up the Social Inclusion Partnership. And the key to reducing rough sleeping, we can't eliminate homelessness, but rough sleeping is a part of that, a small part. The key to it is lots of people working together in partnership. And the Social Inclusion Partnership that was set up in Basingstoke and Dean helped to reduce rough sleeping to virtually zero. And it just made sure that all the agencies were working together in the same direction. There's a lot of goodwill out there, but some people are pulling in this direction and some people are pulling in that direction, and it needs coordination. And I think part of the role of the districts and indeed the county in making money available is to provide that coordination to ensure that people pull in the same direction. But every person who finds him or herself rough sleeping has a different reason for it, and it's a different case. And sometimes it's a marriage breakdown, a redundancy that triggered it, an illness that triggered it. Coming out of the army was one case where a person had post-traumatic stress disorder and found it impossible to cope and needed help to get back on his feet and to move forward again. Every case is different. And I don't want to see us doing something precipitate which could impact on that so adversely that it would threaten people's lives. It just would be the wrong thing to do. So I support this amendment. I suggest the changes to make it clear that HASC is talking to the Cabinet, but let's honour the obligation that we put on ourselves to see this through to the 31st of March 2026. Thank you.
Just to confirm, Chairman, Councillor Reid is obviously right, and I'm more than happy to accept that amendment.
Yeah. First of all, Councillor Knowles, when you speak, can you please speak into the mic, because we can't hear it clearly at the top table for recording. Secondly, Councillor Reid, yeah, that was more of a debating item, but the points that you brought forward are very valid, and I'm sure every member sitting around the meeting today would totally agree with the points that you brought forward, but I didn't find many questions in there at all.
Okay,
however,
my apologies, Chairman. I'll ask the Director if she agrees with me.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, going on from Councillor Reid, I would like to ask the Director regarding the homeless or the rough sleepers. I think that I certainly support this, actually, that we should go on until March 2026 to give more time. What I would like is reassurances that you say that you've got 400 odd social workers around and we can all work and play, that they can all play their part. I did have an incident only last week with a rough sleeper, and thanks to Two Saints, they helped considerably. Without them, the poor lady would have been in such a state. So, because we couldn't find anybody else at the time. So, can I have reassurances from you that you will make sure that everyone knows where to find people, because this is always it often happens at night, which is often a greater problem. But we certainly need to be able to make sure that we are working in partnership with everyone. And I think that's why we need a little bit more time to make sure everyone is working together. Can you give me those reassurances, please?
Thank you, Councillor. What we intend to do, should recommendations be taken forward, is to have a bespoke team of people working to make sure that we provide a timely transition plan. And I hope that you also find reassurance in the fact that one of my priorities as Director is to make sure that we're working in partnerships on any transition plan that we need to put in place with regard to this.
Thank you, that would be great. I think if the members had some idea as to how to find these people easily when it's brought to your attention, it would be really helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Minahan.
Thank you, Chair. Approximately 1,700 offenders were given early release from prison recently. One of the national concerns were raised was in regard to homelessness and the numbers. Drilling down to Hampshire, do we anticipate any impact on our homeless figures at this time? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. There have been two one-off release dates. One of them has passed now, which has been the 10th of September. There's a subsequent one in October. The impact for Hampshire, with the information that we have at the moment, is negligible. What we don't yet know is the exact nature of the cohort going into October, but certainly from the September perspective, things have moved on with negligible impact for Hampshire. We will continue to monitor that situation. We're primed within our mental health teams within Adults Health and Care to be able to support. And where there are prisoners with potential care and support needs, then the local authorities are approached and given notice around those particular cohorts of individuals. So we don't know everything yet. But as far as the September release has been, as I say, negligible impact for Hampshire, and we have also that reassurance around them informing us should there be somebody with a vulnerability or care and support, a potential care and support need being released.
Thank you. When you say negligible, do we talk numbers?
I think it's too complex for us to describe that, because you have groups of people that might need accommodation. Then you would also have people who are in need of care and support. And again, it's one of these issues that split across the different tiers of local authorities. From a care and support perspective, I think we were contacted about 4 individuals, and that's in the September tranche of individuals. But as I say, we don't yet know quite what the arrangements will be for the October date.
Councillor Craig.
Thank you. Can I ask what discussions have been had with other partners that obviously have the homelessness? Because it concerns me that not just here, but other people are looking at their budgets and only dealing with their responsibilities instead of working in those partnerships. You did say that we need to be working in partnerships, and I just want to make sure that we're having discussions now and those discussions will continue, rather than, although we're saying keep the money up until March 2026, we're not sort of having those discussions. People know what their responsibilities are and how it's going to affect them.
I will, thank you, Councillor. I will hand over to Jackie in a second, because her team have been managing the engagement so far. I hope that you can see from the robust consultation and the responses there, the level of engagement that has occurred, not only with residents, but also with an ongoing conversation with many different organisations that are, I would like to think, all stakeholders with a part to play in homelessness in Hampshire. But I will hand over to Jackie, who will be able to provide you with a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Yes, we had constant contact with obviously the 11 district and boroughs and the Director of Housing or Head of Housing there. We spoke to the Integrated Care Board to understand the impact from the Integrated Care Board, the Office of Police and Crime Commissioners, probation, homelessness and health inclusion. We spoke to, and we were invited to the Homelessness Forum at Basingstoke and Dean as well. So absolutely, we have been in contact with all of the relevant partners on a very regular basis. Yeah,
and of course, all the providers involved in those services as well. And I suppose that's why I chose to end my presentation with the comment around making this my priority to work in partnership, because I can see why the spotlight has moved away from consultation, why that's something that is necessary for me to say. And I think number of stakeholders in the room today and are absolutely committed to that. And I know that also, should this be taken forward, HASC will want regular reports around those types of aspects of this proposal.
Thank you. I think it worries me. You said yourself a lot of homeless are through mental health. And you'll remember at the last HASC meeting, we mentioned mental health and how people are just falling through the cracks all the time. It just concerns me that if those partnerships aren't in place and working and continuing probably after March 26 as well, that we're going to see a huge amount of people out there that again will be missed and falling through the cracks. So it just, those meetings will continue after the March 26 as well.
Yes, I mean, can I confirm? I know the working group, Councillor North, being double-hatted, brought this point up, and we know that Jackie was out there dealing directly with the local borough and district authorities and kept us up to date throughout the working group process. Councillor Stannard.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to pick up on something that Councillor Hiscott raised a few moments ago, when quite appropriately he raised concerns about the fact that maybe in the future, if this all goes through, that for some groups of people, there won't in future be a physical base that they can attend, and therefore they may lose a point of contact with people who may be able to help them and support them. And I think at that point, Jackie intervened and said that it would be appropriate for our social workers to engage with those people. And so my question is, are our current social workers able to take on an influx of additional work when we know that they already have exceedingly heavy workloads? And if they are, that rather surprises me, but you might be able to convince me. But have you factored into your costings anywhere the cost of taking on additional staff, additional social workers, to cope with the influx that you will need? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If I could come back on that. The first thing to say, I think, is that there are two phases to this, should the decision be made. There is the transitional phase, and then there's the ongoing phase after that. In the transitional phase, we have included in our minds and planning the potential to need a bespoke team. So nobody will need to go through ordinary referral routes. We will be working with people through that transition as a bespoke team of social workers. Going forward, we would expect that after those increases in demand, that ongoing, that will be something that is becomes part of business as usual running. We do have a number of social workers who already work with people who are at risk of homelessness or are homeless. And so we would continue to use their expertise. And I'll say we have a considerable number of those workers used to this type of work. The other thing I would say, though, is that desktop exercise I referred to earlier, and certainly from our experience on the ground from people working in mental health, is that there are a number of people that can be signposted to other services. We do have, for example, public health, substance misuse services, as I referred to earlier. We've got wellbeing centres in across Hampshire. We've got 12 of those. So, and not everybody will, and also some people will only require support, a minimal amount of support and accommodation. So I think there's a whole wealth and network of services there for people. And I am not concerned about the capacity issues beyond that transition period where we will need extra workers, and we've already done some tentative work on thinking through how that might look and what we might need to provide there to provide that bespoke team. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So I think you're reassuring us that you currently have and will have in the foreseeable future the capacity to cope with this additional workload on your social workers.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Councillor Tree.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to disclose a potential personal interest that has become apparent. So I just want to state and draw to attention my register of interests, which show I am a Deputy Leader of East Hampshire District Council. So as unpalatable as they might be, savings and cuts made by the council itself are preferable to effective bankruptcy if we were to file a Section 114 and reduce to skeleton statutory services, which is why I support Councillor North's amendment compared to the initial proposed recommendation wording, as it's very much in the spirit of our responsibility in that respect. So just again, for the avoidance of doubt of the public watching, if the council was ever in a position to effectively file a Section 114 and declare bankruptcy, we're here and we plummet down and go into statutory services. That, as unpalatable as it might be, gives time, gives charities and other organisations we deal with the ability to at least attempt to adapt, and is the least worst scenario, but is still not is far from ideal. So my actual question on that basis is, even taking this amendment into consideration, this is until 31st of March 2026. So my question is, come 1st of April 2026, if this if this amendment, is passed, and if, for argument's sake, Hampshire County Council puts that into effect, and I don't know who to address this question to, but are we in a better position come 1st of April than we would be if we didn't follow this recommendation? That's the question. Thank you. Well, I would be very, very vote on. Shall we talk about the budget? I think the director would like to answer.
Thank you, Councillor. Looking at this in as much as we can predict that far into the future, then for me this reduces the financial burden on the council, given the situation that we are in. So from that perspective, we will be in a better financial position and able to provide statutory services. And this is an element that contributes to that position, alongside the other proposals that we're putting forward.
Last but not least, no. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. I'd just like to pick up on the questions asked by Councillor Minahan about early releases. When you said that there hadn't been much impact on Hampshire, I take it that what you actually mean is there hadn't been much impact on Hampshire County Council. Not that there hadn't been early releases where people were homeless and other services may well have picked them up.
Yes, Councillor Taylor, that is what I was referring to. Apologies.
Members, have we concluded all the questions? Are there any proposals for debate, or shall Councillor Taylor?
Sorry, thank you. I'd like to ask a question. Would you? We've got two amendments. They are different amendments, and there's reasons why they're different. Can you explain to me the order in which we will take them and how we will debate them, please? Thank you.
The order in which we'll take them was your amendment was received last, so we take them in the order, the last one first, in reverse order. So we'll do yours first, followed by Councillor North's. Taking into account that Councillor North's terminology of working group actually will be changed to HASC.
Can I also ask a question, Chairman, that I haven't seen a written copy of Councillor?
They're going to be put up on the screen.
They need to be seconded as well.
Yeah. And furthermore, by the two amendments, we need a proposer and we need a seconder on yours, Councillor Taylor, and obviously Councillor North.
Sorry, Chairman, just a quick question. Can we sit? It's very difficult to know which amendments I may or may not wish to vote for without seeing them on the screen together so that we can make a informed choice without sort of 30 seconds to go, if that could be done. Thank you.
Before we do that, can we have a seconder for Councillor Taylor's amendment? Councillor Harrison, thank you. And Councillor North. Councillor Reid, thank you. That is that they were the original recommendations from the officers, and now we'll put up firstly Councillor Taylor's, please. Has everybody taken note of that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, but so it would be helpful if Councillor Taylor could explain exactly what she means by that.
By all means.
Thank you. I'm quite happy to explain it, but if we're debating it, I'll debate it separately, if that's okay. Or do you want me to do both? Do both? Okie dokie. My proposal, it relates specifically, and I've done it this way for a matter of process, to the recommendations that we are being asked to consider on page 33 of our report. So I'll just give members a little chance to get to page 33, which are the recommendations that this committee, the Select Committee, supports the recommendations made by officers, detailed below. And they're in two sort of parts. One is that the County Council ends funding for homelessness support, known as social inclusion, on the 30th of April 2025, and that the County Council gives 6 months' notice to terminate these services on the 30th of April 2025. Now, my amendment is suggested amendment is to these proposals, which is that the first bullet point or first recommendation should be deleted. That is to say, the words that the County Council ends funding for homelessness support services on the 31st of April should be deleted, because it's not required apart from anything else. And the other is that the county, the date for when we stop the agreements should be the 31st of March 2026, which is when the contracts come to an end. Now, there is a reason, if I can debate that, so having explained that, that I'm putting forward this motion in this particular manner. And that really is because I am trying to represent what the working party views were about this. Some of the other issues about monitoring relate to things that we would, should decisions be taken, actually be put on our work programme. So I haven't included those necessarily because we would do that as a committee in HASC. But the reason that I'm doing this and in this particular way and making this amendment is that, like many of us, I have been struck by the feedback from service users that we got during the course of consultation about the impact that these services have had on their lives and how some of them felt that they would be dead on the streets without it. Lots of partner organisations made it very clear, including the police, the NHS, the ICB, various charities, Two Saints themselves, about the significant impact and additional costs it would occur to them, the police having to deal with it, the NHS having to deal with it, and so on. And residents themselves, we've heard, are really not happy with this at all. And their disagreement is firmly described in lots of common adjectives such as callous, disgraceful, uncaring, not civilised. And the one that really hit home to me was, if the council can't provide this, what's the point of its existence? You know, what is the point of us? And I think that if we, the only reason this is coming before us is because of a financial imperative. And if we were awash with money and decorating the walls with £5 notes, we would not for a minute consider doing this. None of us would have woken up one day and said, let's do this. We just wouldn't have done that. And so therefore, what I'm trying to do is reflect that. And by deleting that first recommendation, we're doing two things. First of all, it isn't really necessary if we're saying the contract should continue until March 2026. But secondly, it also provides us with an opportunity to revisit this in the event that, as a council, we were successful in our representations to our new government to achieve a fairer funding settlement. Now, if we're not successful in that, it makes no difference because we're bringing the contract to an end anyway, and so the effect is there. But what I'm trying to do is make sure that even if the stable door is slightly shut, we haven't bolted it, that we do have that opportunity to go back at a later stage. So that's why I'm deleting that first part, which says that we will completely end all funding, that we make that as a statement and principle. I don't think we should do that. We should take that bit away. Apart from anything else, it simply isn't needed. And it has to go if we want to actually extend the life of this contract till its end. I think that we do need more time, and I'm glad to see that I'm pushing against an open door about the fact that we need more time for this, because, you know, we have heard and seen the double whammy impact. We've heard it from Two Saints, and we've seen it in our papers, and certainly from the, you know, using Basingstoke and Dean as an example, you know, Basingstoke and Dean were projected to lose £271,000, that's 31%, or 37% rather, of their homeless prevention grant, and coupled with losing Hampshire's money of £336,000, a total loss of £647,000 with very short order notice is just too difficult to manage. It really is too difficult to manage. And I am convinced, and I'm not just convinced, I'm pretty much positive that what will actually happen is that our accommodation in Basingstoke will close. That, you know, Two Saints have no commitment to the building whatsoever, and they can walk away at a minute's notice, and without that support funding it simply isn't viable for them to continue in that. So if this proposal does have to go ahead, then we should not be putting that contract to an end early. We need to give people more time to innovate solutions and implement them. And so at the very least, I agree absolutely with Councillor North. We have always been at one with this, that the contract should not come to an end early and should finish on its current due date of the 31st of March. I do think if we have that as the sole recommendation, then in fact it does make the first part, you know, superfluous. It simply isn't required, and it does give us an opportunity in the future, should the landscape change, to open this issue again if we needed to. And I'm pretty certain none of us would be raising this now if it wasn't for financial circumstances that we're in. So that's where I am with that.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor North?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify on that then, so I agree with the vast majority of what Councillor Taylor says, but I just wanted to get an officer view on that amendment. So does removing bullet point 1 completely, I mean, Councillor Taylor says that's superfluous, commit us to any support of some kind post 2026? I don't think it does, but I just want to make sure officers are comfortable with that.
I think it's need to refer to legal to be absolutely sure of the implications. It certainly from reading it now, it doesn't appear to make a material difference, but I'd want to just clarify that, and I'm not sure whether we can do that immediately or not.
Can we get some legal advice, and Chairman, even if we need to have a short recess, because if that is the case in terms of it doesn't make that commitment, then I would be perfectly happy to accept Councillor Taylor's amendment, but also only if Councillor Taylor is also happy to add my points 2 and 3 to hers, so that becomes a substantive amendment, and then we can drop the second one.
Well, in all good democracy, I think we need to actually hear your amendment and hear your reasons why you've put that amendment forward, and then the director can come back.
Well, hopefully then I can play for a little bit of time and we can get that legal advice. But as I said, I put that amendment earlier because I thought that I thought it reflected more accurately what the working group was saying. We had significant concerns, as I said earlier, and as Councillor Taylor said, that there just wouldn't be enough time for a transition if we cut the funding to the 30th of April 2025. And I think Councillor Reid made a powerful point earlier, as we'd entered into that contract until 2026. I know that there was parts of that which we could end it early, but actually, if we were to stick to the good faith that we should continue it until 2026. And I know you referred to it earlier, Mr. Chairman, but wearing my other hat as a leader of a district and as a district council, there has been various conversations going on between the county and district heads of service. But also, I think that there needs to be some clarity as part of those conversations then to work through those transitional arrangements. So I think if that clarity is found here in terms of a little bit more time, and if then the Cabinet accept it, then taking into consideration the points that the Director of Two Saints made earlier, I think we will be in a better position. And it's my wish, and I hope it will become the reality, that we won't see a change in the services that service users will receive as a result if we have an 18-month transition. But if we have a 6-month transition, then we potentially will see a difference, and potentially a significant difference as well. And then those parts 2 and 3 to the amendment, Chairman, were just to underline the county council's obligations, because we said earlier, I mean, homelessness and housing is a district council service primarily, obviously working in partnership with other organisations, but public health sits squarely with the county council and social care does. So we want to ensure that those affected by this and potentially impacted would receive those assessments in a timely fashion. I think that's what recommendation 2 says. And then it's up to this committee chairman to monitor that and monitor the progress of that, which is what it says there in item 3, which is obviously one of the recommendations of the working group. So I mean that's my proposal, and I see legal officers are still chatting to each other, but I've run out of things to say, Chairman.
Can I just ask the director if she wants to come back first?
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear that our officer recommendation remains that we would, the decision that we are putting before Cabinet is that the service would end on the April 2025 with 6 months notice. So when council asked me whether I was happy, I think it's more about whether that proposal accurately reflects the same thing in terms of cessation of service. Just to make the point also that from a county council perspective, we have to predict into the future, and we're not imagining a situation where there will be significantly additional finances available, certainly, and obviously that needs to be confirmed. We're in a situation of uncertainty, but that's the other context here, that the other point that I'd make on that. Thank you.
And that's a good point, Chairman. That was the other thing I was going to say. I don't understand what Councillor Taylor was saying in terms of a small chink of light, but considering the winter fuel allowance is about to be cut, I'm not sure there's going to be a significant amount of money that the Chancellor's going to find down the back of the sofa to fund this, to fund the county to continue these types of services at least. But just to clarify, I don't think I was asking if you were happy with the amendment as it was. I think I was asking if you were happy that Councillor Taylor's amendment didn't commit the councils for any funding of the services post 2026. I don't think it does, but what's the legal view?
Thank you, that's fine, thank you.
Right, before I bring in three councillors that have raised their hands, Rebecca, would you like to give us a legal definition?
Hi, just to clarify, at the current time we have contract arrangements which end at the end of March 2026. For those arrangements to be renewed or extended, that would have to be subject to a decision-making process in its own right. So in that respect, if Councillor Taylor's amendment as proposed goes forward, it doesn't commit the council to anything beyond the end of March 2026.
That being the case then, Chairman, I'm happy to accept Councillor Taylor's amendment as long as she accepts my points 2 and 3.
In the spirit of mutual admiration and cooperation, I'm willing to accept Councillor North's additions. Thank you.
Councillor Reid, you had your hand up.
Yes, I was just, I think I've just been overtaken by events because we've got absolute agreement breaking out here, and it's just a question of the wording. I think it's important that we do have at least 2 and 3 in there, even if the preamble is Councillor Taylor's 1, because our job today is to look at the budget proposals and to comment on them, and to comment on them specifically in the light of the Working Party's report that we set up and asked for. So I think it's absolutely right that we should use at least some of the wording that the Working Party brought forward. It shows an audit trail for some time in the future when people look back at the decisions we've made and say, how did they get to that position? So I think we're in a logical place. Strictly speaking, I think Councillor Taylor's wording is in some areas superfluous because the contracts are going to come to an end in April 26 anyway, as the legal people have just advised us. But I think the public want us to debate the issues, not the semantics. So if we've got a way forward and our meaning is clear, let's pass that on to Cabinet.
Councillor Harrison.
Yes, Chairman, I rather like the way things are beginning to settle here. I think we've got the best of both amendments. As the seconder of the first motion, I'm comfortable. The first paragraph being superfluous, logically, if it is superfluous, it doesn't matter whether it's there or it's not there. So I think we can probably put together an amendment here that combines both the wishes on both sides of the chamber, and at the end of the day, we're not the decision makers here. We're only making a recommendation to Cabinet, who will obviously have the wider context in mind about how it affects Hampshire County Council's ability to carry on in the future.
Very true. Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Tree.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm also really pleased that the motions are finding a meeting of minds because I was struggling to work out how to pull them both together and support both Councillor North and Councillor Taylor. Just going back to the date question, the 31st of March 2026, obviously the word uncertainty is used a lot, and there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty with a new government. There's a lot of uncertainty with potential devolution settlements, this, that and the other. Is there, if the council proceeded with the original plan, is there not a danger that that we go too fast and we cut and change things, and then all of a sudden things are not as bad as we thought? And as we know, once buildings have been given up and people have stopped and volunteers walk away, you can't just say, oh, actually it's not as bad as we thought, let's all come back. So does my question, I guess, to officers is, does changing to 2026 not give us just that little bit more breathing space, flexibility? Because while some great settlement might not have happened by end of March 2026, there may well be between the period of 25 and 26, there may be a greater understanding or announcement as to how things, there could be light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe we don't want to go too fast. Is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I know I've already stated this fact with regard to the financial position, but just to rehearse that, we are predicting an overall shortfall now of £175 million for 25 to 26, as opposed to the 132 million previously put forward. I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm not sure what will be happening in the coming year with regard to national government policy, but certainly from my perspective, that feels very real, and I think that context needs to be taken into account.
Councillor Branson.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just looking at the two wordings, and actually, as a member of the working group, I'm actually happier with what's on the amendment by Councillor North. I just would like to put that on the thing because I feel it covers much more what the working group said and what we wanted to put forward. But obviously, I will go with the majority.
Yes, I mean, the whole point of the working group is to recommend to HASC to put forward an amendment that either agrees or disagrees with compared to the original recommendation. So we've had legal advice from Rebecca, which stands, and I think we need to agree, members, that we're happy to combine the two amendments and get the wording right. And whilst we do that, I would recommend, if you're all in agreement with that, members voting to agree that we combine the two recommendations, then we will spend time putting the words together for you to vote on it once we've concluded that. So can I have agreement by the members that we combine the two recommendations?
Agreed, Mr. Chairman, and if Councillor Taylor's happy to propose the combined recommendations, I'm happy to second them. Sorry to Councillor Harrison and Councillor Reid, previous seconders, but I think that's probably more appropriate.
All agreed? I think it's very important, as one member said, that this is going to the Cabinet, as Councillor Harrison said, and the important aspect about the second and third item of Councillor North's is that the Cabinet can put it back to HASC to actually ensure that's on their work programme, to ensure that we get those reviews in that due time. But it's important that we make that recommendation to go forward. Can I suggest, whilst we do some wordsmithing, that we take a 5-minute break? Agreed? Thank you. Members, we're now back in session, and both parties from the previous two amendments have agreed, and legal are happy with the proposed amendment, which is behind you on the screen, which states 1, delete that the County Council ends funding for homelessness support services, also known as social inclusion services, on the 30th of April 2025. 2, that the County Council gives notice that the 6 contracts and 3 grants arrangements in place for these services will come to an end at the expiry of the contracts and grant arrangements on the 31st of March 2026. Can you all read 3 and 4? Oh, I'm struggling at this end. Yeah. Right, members, we now have to, if everybody's read the 4 amendments on the proposed amendment, we need a proposer and seconder, and may I suggest Councillor Taylor and Councillor North. All agreed? Agreed. And we've agreed the amendments. Can we take a vote? Can we take a vote, please? Councillor Harrison.
Chairman, I want to make my position clear. I do not support withdrawal of funding for homeless services. I am supporting this on the basis that it's better than the officer recommendation. Of all the cuts I've been involved in as a county councillor over 20 years, this probably is the most difficult. I expected to be surrounded by glum faces today, and that's proved to be the case. I don't think any of us are really happy that we're withdrawing support from some of the most vulnerable people in our society. I would hope that Cabinet, seeing the bigger picture, use their collective wisdom to find whatever means they can to support homeless people going forward. And I think we're all very impressed by social services, adult social care people that work in this authority and the work they do. But it is with a heavy heart that I support this proposal on the basis that it's slightly better than the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Can we now vote, please, all the members? Carried. Thank you.
So this then becomes the substantive. So we just.
Members, this now becomes the substantive recommendation to Cabinet, and I request you all now to vote for this recommendation to go to Cabinet. That's carried. Members, thank you very much. Members, we now go on to item 6B, adult social care charges, which is headed at Appendix 11 to the draft Cabinet report, starting on page 111. Director, I'd like to introduce you to start on this presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, Appendix 11 is on the proposal to change adult social care charges. Again, I will provide an overview and highlight key points in the interests of time. This report considers the proposal to take into account 100% of assessable income when carrying out financial assessment for individuals with non-residential care and support needs. Currently, the County Council takes 95% of an individual's assessable income into account when calculating their maximum contribution to their care and support. There are separate financial assessment considerations for individuals in residential and nursing settings which are not affected. The report makes one recommendation: to take into account 100% of an individual's income when carrying out a financial assessment for care other than in a care home, and amend the paying for care policy and guidance accordingly, with the change to take effect from April 2024. In making this recommendation, officers have taken into account the relevant sections of the Care Act and associated care and support regulations and statutory guidance, and we remain compliant. To ensure that individuals have sufficient income left to cover their daily living costs, the Department of Health and Social Care set out nationally the minimum amount of income that an individual must have remaining, which is called the minimum income guarantee. In addition to this amount, the individual may have specific disability-related expenses and housing costs that are also taken into account and reduce the level of expected contribution to care and support. As outlined in paragraph 10 of the report, the proposal would bring the County Council's charging calculation for care and support other than in a care home in line with neighbouring authorities, as well as many other councils across the country who already take 100% of accessible income into account as part of the financial assessment. I believe we carried out an inquiry and 28 local authorities responded to us, of which only 2 had a lower amount than 100% accessible income. This proposal received 4,077 responses as part of the future service consultation, with 54 responses from other organisations. There was no majority consensus from people. However, respondents were more likely to disagree than to agree, and to do so strongly, with a total of 48% overall disagreement and 42% overall agreement. But I think it's important to stress that there was no majority consensus. The full summary of the Future Services consultation feedback is provided in Sub-Appendix A on page 124 in the public pack. If a decision is made to take into account 100% of accessible income, a comprehensive communication plan will be put in place to ensure that all impacted individuals and their representatives have early notice of the increase in contribution. A review of the paying for care advice and guidance was also be undertaken through a co-production approach involving service users and representatives, particularly focusing on ensuring that signposting information is clear and supports individuals accessing all relevant benefits. Thank you, Chair.
Members, I'd just like to remind you of the view of the working group on this proposal. The working group supports the move to 100% of accessible income into account as part of the financial assessment calculation, and further recommends that the County Council undertakes a review 6 months after the implementation of the impact of the new charging processes on individuals. Can I invite any comments from the working group? None. Any questions from members? None. Any debate? None. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regard to the fact that the working party's recommendation was that we should undertake a review in 6 months of the implementation of the impact, I just wondered what the views of fellow members would be as to whether or not that needs to be an amendment to be reflected, or whether or not we are happy simply to put it on our work programme in the event the decision goes forward. Thank you.
Members, are you happy that that item actually goes on the HASC work programme?
Agreed.
All agreed? Thank you. Then members, we vote on the substantive recommendation that has been stated by the Director. All those in favour? That's agreed. Thank you. The next item is Adult Social Care Grant Scheme 6C, Appendix 12 of the draft Cabinet Report on page 141. I invite the Director to open the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I will provide an overview and highlights this morning, or this afternoon actually. This report considers the proposal to stop funding 3 adult social care grant schemes the Hampshire County Council does not have a legal requirement to provide. By ceasing these, 3 adult social care grant schemes would deliver £620,000 worth of savings. Of the 3 schemes, 2 are infrastructure grant schemes to the councils for voluntary service and to support the 12 local citizens' advice offices in Hampshire. These provide support to wider voluntary, community and social enterprise sectors in Hampshire to enable them to function rather than directly delivering services to residents. The other grant scheme is the Local Solutions Grant, which provides one-off start-up funding to voluntary community sector groups to help set up services in local communities that may prevent the need for adult social care. The report makes 3 recommendations: to cease the Council's for Voluntary Service Infrastructure Grant scheme from the 1st of April 2025, saving £500,000 per year from the associated budget. Secondly, to cease the Citizens Advice Infrastructure Grant scheme from the 1st of April 2025, saving £65,000 per year from the associated budget. And thirdly, to cease the Local Solutions Grant scheme from the 1st of April 2025, saving £55,000 per year from the associated budget. In making these recommendations, officers have taken into account the statutory duties of the County Council under the Care Act 2014, alongside the significant financial challenges facing the County Council as outlined in the main Cabinet report. The Care Act 2014 provides that the County Council has a general duty to provide or arrange for the provision of services, facilities or resources, or take other steps which it considers will contribute towards preventing or delaying the development of care and support needs, and to reduce the need for care and support by adults in its area. The award of adult social care grants is one way that currently supports the County Council to meet these responsibilities. The County Council will continue to meet its responsibilities under the Care Act through several other ways, as shown in paragraph 24 of the appendix report. The Future Services consultation received 3,608 responses linked to this proposal. The majority of respondents disagreed with the proposal, with many responses focusing comments on the eventual impacts on vulnerable residents, and there were comments that the proposal affecting infrastructure support would weaken the resilience and effectiveness of a sector which is critical both to vulnerable residents and to ensuring an effective joint system of support and demand management. The impacts identified by respondents were broadly in line with the impacts identified by officers prior to the Future Services consultation. Key impacts noted by respondents and by officers prior to the consultation were that they may affect groups related to the characteristics of age, disability and poverty. In mitigation, Adults Health and Care can continue to work to support the VCSE sector and provide other forms of assistance such as training, access to information, support to find funding and volunteering support, as well as working to best align support from other local strategic partners to ensure that the VCSE support for residents at risk of requiring adult social care continues to be provided. The Future Services consultation has not identified any new impacts that haven't been previously considered by the County Council's officers when preparing this proposal for future savings, and mitigations have been identified in response to those impacts. Considering on balance the impact and mitigations of the proposal, alongside the County Council's duty to establish a balanced budget, the recommendation is made to withdraw the County Council's 3 remaining adult social care grant schemes. Thank you.
Members, I would just like to remind you that the working group supports and recommends ceasing the grants as outlined in the consultation. We acknowledge that this may add pressure to the third sector at a time when councils and other organisations seek to rely on it more. Can I invite any members of the working group for comments? Councillor North.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make a quick comment on point 2 there of the grants in terms of citizens' advice, and 70% of respondents disagree with the proposal. And I think that just shows what sort of good stead the citizens' advice is held in. But to reassure any members of the public watching on the webcast, I think it's right to note that the vast majority of the funding for the Citizens Advice Bureaus comes from either district or boroughs or other organisations, not the County Council. This is a very small infrastructure grant, and it's not going to stop the day-to-day running of the Citizens Advice Bureaus.
Thank you. Councillor Joy.
Thank you, Chairman. Whilst recognising the necessity for so many of the proposals which we've been asked to consider, I just wanted to put on record my personal regret at the situation, particularly with regard to the Councils for Voluntary Service, with whom, on behalf of the Council, I've spent many years working very closely and fully appreciate the work that they do. And I just simply wanted that noted.
Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, I had a question for officers. Is that okay? Obviously, you know, this was another difficult area because we recognise the importance of these voluntary sector organisations in filling the gaps that we as organisations are unable to fund ourselves because of the situation that we've all been in with regards to funding over very many years. In particular, in relation to the Citizens Advice Bureau, I think all of us in the Working Party accepted that the additional difficulties were going to be faced by these organisations, and we have had an additional comment that came through and was circulated by email, and that did bring up one thing that I just wanted to get some clarification on from yourselves, and that is how the infrastructure grant for the Citizens Advice Bureau enables it to act as a funnel, as it were, and a central point of contact for Hampshire County Council in its work and discussions with local citizens' advice. And I'm just wondering whether or not have we considered the impact of that central point not being there and any extra work and time that it's going to take us to have to perhaps get things going, moving, or suddenly having to deal with lots of individual citizens' advice bureaus looking for support on how they gain funding or raise money, for example.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I'll just make a couple of broad points and then look to Pete if he has anything else to add. I think just to reiterate what Councillor North intimated earlier, that the CAB, the infrastructure grant funds, are separate to the support that is delivered from the citizens' advice offices and are funded separately. The other thing to say is that these organisations and all of them who have previously received grant awards from Hampshire already receive funding from other support, other sources. But I think it's important to flag that as a directorate, we're absolutely wanting to work, continuing to work with the VCSE in all aspects of what they do. It's incredibly important to us, and we will be doing that. We can't look at, unfortunately, the funding aspect of that, but there are other things that we can do through expertise and building relationships, and we will do all of those things to make sure that we have a seamless transition. But I don't know, Peter, if there's anything you wanted to add.
Thank you, Director. I think the Director has covered most of the important parts in terms of this is a contribution towards the service and doesn't cover the full cost. I can also say that in previous decisions, such as in our savings programme for 2023, we made similar reductions in terms of grants to infrastructure organisations. For those organisations, we still continue to work with them, and they still attend meetings with us. At this time, and we endeavour that will continue into the future, and we expect this to continue in this case. Obviously, our funding, being a contribution, reduces the risk of that organisation ceasing, but it does not eliminate that risk. However, we will continue to work with them to try and find funding from other sources, and if we're able to apply for funding from external sources, we can then flow through to those organisations. We'll also look to do that. So at this time, we don't see that organisation ceasing, nor that ability to kind of coordinate and work with those local citizen advice bureaus going forwards.
Any other questions, members? Any debate? Any amendments? Councillor Minhan.
Thank you, Chair. It's following on from the working group's concerns about the pressure to the third sector at this time, and also following on from the Director and her team's recent conversations. I would like to add the amendment. Should the decision be made to withdraw the grants, the committee also recommends Hampshire County Council continue to work actively with the current grant holders to explore ways that the services could continue to be sustained. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Taylor. All in agreement for that amendment? Agreed. So, members, HASC recommends to the Cabinet recommendation 1 to cease the Councils for Voluntary Services Infrastructure Grant Scheme from the 1st of April 2025, saving £500,000 per year from the associated budget. Recommendation 2 to cease the Citizen Advised Infrastructure Grant Scheme from the 1st of April 2025, saving £65,000 per year from the associated budget. Recommendation 3 to cease the Local Solutions Grant Scheme from the 1st of April 2025, saving £55,000 per year from the associated budget. And 4, should the decision be made to withdraw the grants, HASC also recommends Hampshire County Council continue to work actively with the current grant holders to explore ways that the services could continue to be sustained. Is that right? Or recommends not HASC, the County Council. Yeah. Are we in agreement?
Agreed.
Can we vote on that, please, members? That's carried, members. Thank you very much.
Chair, can let me put on record that I'm actually voting against this one. I sit in far too many meetings where we're pushing things onto the voluntary sector to take over, and then we're cutting more and more to them. So I'm totally against these cuts.
Could I have votes then against Councillor Craig, Councillor Harrison and Councillor Irish? Thank you.
Chairman, can I just make a comment? Yeah, I'm surprised about that because the Liberal Democrat members of the working group were more than happy to support the recommendation of the working group. Just wanted to put that on record, Mr. Chairman.
I wasn't part of the working group.
And neither was I.
Next item. So, Councillor Irish.
Yeah, just to say that I think we can change our minds on things. You know, we do go away and reflect on things and think very carefully about it. And sometimes you do need to change your opinion. So that's why I've done that today. Thank you.
Councillor Tree.
So can I just ask about the process? Have we just had a recorded vote or not? Because a recorded vote wasn't requested. We've just had a show of hands against. Is that correct? Thank you.
A recorded vote has to be requested, Councillor Tree. Can I now invite the leader, Councillor Nick Adams-King, to sum up at the end of the pre-scrutiny of the items we've covered today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, thank you, Chairman and members, for the opportunity to comment following today's considerations and to be able to listen to the views expressed by everyone today. We do indeed have difficult decisions that lie ahead, as the scale of our financial pressures are, as you all know, so much bigger than we've ever seen before. Our role is to serve the people of Hampshire to the best of our abilities, and faced with such complex challenges, I appreciate the care and deliberation you've shown in scrutinising these important savings proposals. The strength of your commitment to Hampshire's communities is truly evident, and most importantly to the vulnerable people that we are here to serve most of all. The perspectives shared by everyone here today have been invaluable, and please know that they've been heard. And it was really helpful to hear the presentation from Richard and to understand the point of view of Two Saints, and also to understand that you are writing to the Universal Services Select Committee to express your views about the community transport element of their deliberations as well. It's clear that you've examined very carefully all the views received in relation to the savings proposals in front of you. In the same way, when Cabinet meet on the 14th of October to make final decisions in relation to the overall 13 saving options, the recommendations of this and the other scrutiny committees and those of the county's officers will be thoroughly assessed, alongside the feedback from the public consultation held earlier this year. We'll be looking at the potential impact that the proposals may have on Hampshire's residents, should they go ahead. Finally, I'd just like to say thank you for the time that you've spent, your review and the invaluable insights that you've given us all. We will certainly be taking them into account when we meet on the 14th of October.
Thank you, Leader. Item 7, members, is the work programme. The work programme has been updated following comments made at the last HASC meeting. Are members happy to approve the updated work programme, or are there any additions to make as a result of the debate on the items considered to date? I think we've noted items that will be put on there, obviously, once the Cabinet has made its decision on the 14th of October. So are we happy that the recommendation is that the Health and Adult Social Care Select Committee discuss and agree potential items for the work programme that can be prioritised and allocated by the Chairman of the Health and Adult Social Care Select Committee in consultation with the Director of Adult Health and Care? All agreed? Agreed. And finally, before we close the webcast and the meeting, members, I'd just like to thank all the hard work and dedication by the working group, the officers that we work with on all the items today, and all the members of HASC today who've gave excellent contribution to our amendments and the decisions we made on these very hard proposed budget proposals for 2025 and 2026. I'm most grateful for all your support at this meeting. Thank you. Can you close the webcast, please?